Okay, good morning everyone. If you can hear me, like can you type something on the chat box? Hello, good morning. Hey, good morning. Let me type something. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so thanks for joining me again here. Again, if you have any comments or questions or suggestions, please don't hesitate to say something. Huwag tayong mahiya na magtanong. Pwede dito, pwede sa ating Discord channel para malaman natin kung ano yung pangangailangan ng bawat isa sa atin. So that we'll know like what you need, what else we can do to make to optimize the learning that we are supposed to have today. So I forgot to put this. Good morning. Ayan. Kind of adjusted that one. Okay, so today we'll do basic marker techniques. So of course there are a lot of videos out there showing you how to use your markers. Well, this is just another one of them, but at least here you can ask me questions right away, and then if you have any problems or you're having issues while you're working with your markers, just a message away anyway via Discord. So I already posted hello, good morning to everyone. So it's Denise, Faye, sino si Alpha Winter, Jewel Ann, Nicole, Aya, Janice, and Donna. Nasa na yung iba? Well, anyway, they can watch this later on. I hope you have, if you have your materials with you, I really suggest that you join me in doing things today, para sabayan nyo ako. You don't have to do this right away. You can always just do something na parang scratch lang or a practice sheet, because you will really need okay lang, it's fine, just as long as you're there, it's fine. I hope the connection is okay. I'm kinda having issues with my ISP today, like I can't access Zoom or anything, so I hope this one goes well until the end. So again, if you have your materials with you, your alcohol markers, whatever brand it is, try to join me so that we can do things together. By the way, I forgot something, so let me just get it. Okay, good morning again. Okay, so we'll try to work on some things today. Again, if you have your materials with you, like join me in doing things. Diba? I haven't been using markers for a very long time. No, siguro mga I've been using markers siguro mga 3-4 years pa lang. It's not that long, no? But I found out that a lot of I've been using watercolors longer than markers, just because like alcohol markers, they were very expensive back in the day. At least now you have more choices, no? There are cheaper alternatives than your usual Mayoken or Kuret Color or Kuretake or even the Copic. So there are a lot more cheaper alternatives, so that's a good thing. Basically, the big difference between the two markers and watercolor is that I noticed that if you use markers, your colors tend to be brighter, no? Mas matingkad yung kulay nila. So if you're doing interior renders, then even from afar, it looks like if you know how to use your markers, they tend to be very vibrant, and they're very eye-catching. Unlike watercolors, especially if your style is on the washy side, like you use a lot of water. So if you do that for watercolors, they tend to look very pale, no? Hindi sila matingkad, parang faded yung kulay. They look very good up if you look at them from a very close distance, no? Maganda sila pag malapit, pero pag malayo, sometimes they tend to fade away because they're not very eye-catching, no? So there are advantages and disadvantages to the two of them. Like if, for example, you've had more experience with watercolor than markers, then I found that a lot of your skills in watercolors are very transferable to using markers, no? So ibig sabihin, like, kung paano ka gumagamit ng watercolor, more or less pareho siya. Ay magagamit mo yung mga techniques na yon kahit papaano, no, sa paggamit ng markers. Okay? So one thing that I would like to say, no, as a start, pag gumamit kayo ng markers, dapat hindi kayo natatakot. You should be you should be brave and fearless when you're using markers. So, like markers are not for the weak-hearted. Unlike watercolors, you can't erase marks. Pag nandyan na nakalatag na yung kulay, wala na, paninindigan mo na siya. So, when you're using markers, you have to prepare ahead of time, like what colors you're going to use, what color scheme you plan to use in your perspective or in your artwork, so that and then maybe you can even do some test sheets or swatch boards to see if the colors work with each other before you fully commit to putting them into your artwork, no? Para naplano na siya. So for this time, you really have to know, you have to plan ahead, no? So one advice that I can give you for planning ahead is, number one, you have to choose your colors first, no? So how do you do that? I don't know about the color system of other markers, but most of the time I use Copic. This is the only one that I have. I've built it over the years, so I now have 72 colors. But you don't need 72 colors, no? I think like I got by with 36 colors for a couple of years bago ako bumili pa ng isa. So 36 is fine. 24 I think is a little too limited, masyadong konti. So I think for any brand, regardless of whatever kind of markers you're going to use, try to get at least 36 colors, and then pick the colors that you usually use. So this is just for Copics. I think it's very similar for other markers. You have to know, you have to be acquainted with the color numbering system of the marker of your choice. So for example, dito, especially if you're planning to do a lot of blending. So for example, here, I have 3 markers. They're all on the red. So medyo may pagka-pink yung color. So for the Copic system, they use usually 3 digits. 3 digits for the color. So this one is like R00, R11, and R22. So of course, the higher the number, the darker the color. So usually, if you want to blend a color, you usually pick something from the same color family. So for example, like these are all in the R's, and then you notice that the colors go up. So 0011, and then R22. So when you're going to use this, you know that these colors blend well with each other, para maganda yung latag ng kulay. However, so of course, not every, you can't, or if you're just going to buy yung mga preset na pre-selected sets, then it's kind of hard to build like these kinds of numbering. So but I noticed that you can always you can get away with certain colors that don't necessarily belong to the same color family, just because like they kind of go okay with each other by experimenting. So for example, I usually use these 3 colors when I want to paint something in green. So these are 3 markers. My basis for choosing this is like number 1, experience, and then the numbering also. So this one is YG41. YG is like yellow green 41, and then G14, and then this one's a G7. So if you notice, like the G7 is obviously very darker color than the 41. But since YG41 is more green than yellow, so I can use this to blend out the colors. Tapos if you notice, like I usually use like 3 colors. So sometimes if I don't have 3 colors that I can blend, I use 2. That also works, but at least for me, my preference is it's at least 3 colors. So 1 light, 1 medium, 1 dark. So if you haven't scrutinized or hindi nyo pa nakikita, ini-inspectionan yung mga markers ninyo, kung ano yung mga kulay nila, tignan nyo na ngayon. Like, try to study the colors and see like what numbers do you have, and then try to logically figure out like which colors work best with each other. Tapos kasi I noticed that the colors on the caps don't necessarily correspond to the actual color of the markers, so sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes there are some colors that are deceptive. Akala mo parang this is one color, and then when you, because of the cap, yung kulay ng ng swatch niya dito sa takip. Pero pag nilagay mo na, ginamit mo na, iba pala yung kulay niya. So be careful about that. So get to know your markers, and I recommend that you do something like this, a swatch paper with all of your markers, marker colors, and the numbers written beside them, para if you're trying to look for colors, don't rely too much on the color of the cap, but rely on the swatch that you made. Now, unfortunately, many markers are not really fade resistant. they don't last as long as like watercolors and other more traditional media, no? So what do I mean by that? They kind of fade over time, no? At mas mabilis siya mag-fade kesa sa mga regular na mga like watercolor, even the prang, no? So this one fades a lot. So every so often you have to redo your swatch, no? Gawin niyo siya uli kasi nagfe-fade yung kulay, no? So yun. So, for example, this one, once you see that's like more intense colors, I reapplied the swatches here, the colors here, just to keep the colors vibrant, no? So do something like this, no? It's kind of meditative, it's kind of relaxing if you're doing it for the first time, no? So hindi nyo pa nagagawa ito, I really suggest that you do something like this. Tapos, if you're one of the fortunate ones who is able to get Copic markers, I suggest that you download this app. It's called teka, di makita. Copic Color DB. I'll type it here. It's a tracker app called Copic Marker DB. So you can download that to keep track of the colors that you have. So for example here, I have all of my colors here. So nandyan siya. It's a little too bright, pero ayan, may kulay siya. Oh yeah, that one. Maybe that one's better. Okay, so ayan. So it has all of my colors there. And then I can, for example, like if I need a refill, I can put a mark there, and then it shows me like which ones I need to buy refills for. So it's kind of convenient to have. Oops, nawala na. It's kind of convenient to have something like this to help you keep track of the colors that you need. So ito yung mga colors na kailangan kong bilhin na hindi ko pa nabibili. So just a tip, no, if you're using Copics, that you don't need to get Copics. No? I know they're kind of on the expensive side, so any markers will do. So ayun, what do I use Copics for? No, I don't usually use them to make interiors. I use them for a lot more, but many people do this for interiors, but I use them more for making mga artwork or yeah. So parang I have these, I make nung hindi pa pandemic, I used to join mga craft fair, art fairs, and then I make RuPaul's Drag Race unofficial merch. So I draw like mga cartoon characters of the contestants, and then some of the catchphrases. So all of these I made using Copic markers with pen. Ano yun? Yung Unipin na pen. And then I make small stuff for them. So I showed it to you last time, but I have it most of the time. I just have it here in my sketchbook. Nasa na yun? So you kind of look. What happened here? They kind of look like this. So these are all markers and ano nga ba yun? Pens. Yung Unipin na pen. So if you notice, like I can get like really good shading also, pwedeng, I know people who can do it like very realistically, and these are all when I use something like this. For example, I use like at least 2 colors here. Here, this is like 3 colors for the yellow, and then for this one, it's like 2 colors for the blue, and then a couple of colors also for the green. So these are all mga ganyan. These are all markers. So markers. Ayun. So that's what I usually do with my markers. And then whenever I do, meron pang iba dyan na hindi pa nakukulayan because I don't have time yet. But that will come in a bit. Tapos whenever when I do markers, I always do this. I always test out like which colors work better with each other, especially if I'm running out of ink. Like recently, because of the pandemic, it's a little bit harder for me to get the refills of the inks, so I have to find alternatives. So ayun. Kasi that might be convenient for you to know, especially for example if you're rendering something at night and then you have to finish something, tapos kailangan yung at least you know how your colors work. So try to make it a habit to do something like this before you color. So I'm planning out like what colors to use when I'm rendering, before I render something. Okay, so today we'll do this. I already posted the guidelines for this one on Big Sky, so you can check it out later or now if you want. You can do this later. Just try to follow along if you have your markers. So ayun. Oh wait, not that one. So we already thought I should have placed this earlier, but yeah, you should know the color codes of your markers so that you'll know like how well they work with each other. So usually colors of the same family work together. So if it's a G, try to look for other colors in the G family, and then the higher the number, of course, the darker the color. Just don't rely too much on the color of the cap, because you don't know like the color cap. The cap might be faded already or it's an old stock, so the color of the cap isn't the real color of the actual marker. So always make a swatch sheet of all of your colors so that you'll have a better idea of what actual colors you have in your Copic markers. So ayun. So far, are we okay? So like, if you're okay, like sorry, wala pa lang thumbs up dito, but you can try say something if you have any questions, put it in the chat box. Tapos ayun, so while you're doing that, just another tip when you put your borders, I will don't use alcohol markers, or don't use a permanent marker like this because it will bleed. So use your Unipin. Like for this one, for the borders, I used Unipin. For the lettering, I use my regular this one, just because like I know that I will not paint over this, so it's safe. But for the border, use a more permanent fade proof or smudge proof pen. Kasi pwedeng ganito kasing mangyari. I did this earlier and This is a pen, felt tip pen, yung mga pentel pen, and then I lightly placed like a light color on it. So if you see, it's starting to smudge, so you don't want that because it's kind of messy. And if you use a light color for that, you're going to ruin your tip, no? Madudumihan yung pen ninyo kasi yung ink ng marker mapupunta doon sa color marker niyo, and you don't want that, no? So you try to keep your markers as clean as possible. Okay, so ayun, no? So the paper that I'm using right now is this. Like I found meron palang mga ganito ano sa National. It's just a regular sketch pad. Okay. And then I already tried that doing some swatches last night. It kind of worked well naman. So I'm going to use that today. So it's very thin paper, almost like bond paper. And I told you last time, bond paper essentially is actually pretty good for markers, as long as you're not very rough with it, kasi hindi siya ganon katibay. So you have to be a little bit gentle with using your markers so that you don't ruin your paper. But they work very well, and they're also cheaper. Like this one is like 100 pesos for 24 sheets. So I think that's a pretty good deal, no? So our usual watercolor paper, it's kinda like 70 pesos for like 10 sheets. So this one's cheaper, and it will also save you some markers, no? So the color marker ink, because the paper isn't very thick, no? Hindi siya ganun kakapal. Okay, so we'll start with the first technique, no? Start with the first technique. So we'll do just a very flat color, so essentially we're just trying to check like, okay, how do you use your markers, how do you not make it streaky, how ibig sabihin yung may mga linya-linya, no? How do you keep it like clean and flat and nice. Okay, so just one color. Okay, so you can choose like a color that I haven't really used, no? So whenever I do markers, I always have like a scratch paper beside me, just so that I can test out my colors first before I actually commit to it. So okay, so ito pala wala ng ink. Okay, I thought I still had this. Wala pala to. I'll not use that. Ayun, kasi I hardly use this, so kind of ran out. Trying to look for a color that I hardly use. Ayun. Okay, so when you're doing markers, so there are certain things that you have to remember. Like I mentioned earlier, your skills, if you're used to using, if you're used to using watercolors more than markers, then rendering with markers is kind of similar to working with watercolors. So, di ba, watercolors, you start with a light color, and then if you want to make it darker, then you put colors on top of it. You glaze and glaze colors on top of it until you get the color that you like. So with markers, it's pretty much the same. Okay? The only difference is if you place, for example, a very light color, like for example, I'm going to use this like RV23, so it's a pretty pale pink. Once you put that color, that's it. Hindi na siya, once you place your color, okay, if that's the actual color of the pen, okay, this one's drying up also. Once you have that, no matter how many times you layer it with the same color, it's going to be, that's it. That's the darkest that it will go. Hindi na siya magiging dark pa kahit na patungan mo ng patungan ng kulay. Yan na yung pinaka-dark na kulay niya. Okay? So, hindi kasi, di ba, sa watercolor kasi like, Okay, if it's light and then you want to make it a little darker, you put another layer, you put another layer, and put another layer until it becomes the dark, until you achieve the darkness that you like. No? Sa watercolors, sa markers, hindi ganon. Once eto na talaga yung kulay niya, yan na yon. Hindi na siya magbabago. Okay? So you have to get another color that is darker, and then you put it on top, and that will be the darkest color. That's how you make something from light to dark. We'll work on that later. So we'll just try to do like a simple flat color. Now, if this is your first time to do markers, it's kind of scary because it looks like, oh my god, I'm using so many colors. But that's how the medium works. So just want a flat color. So just using the broad side of my pen, I'm just going to paint like try to get this as even as possible without going over the lines, and then try to take out the streaks. So if you notice, like you see lines, so okay lang yan sa una. You have to work a little bit fast, kasi especially if you want to blend a color, you want to make it as flat and as smooth as possible. You want your paper moist. Some mga tutorial videos on YouTube say like, oh, you want your pen to be juicy, or your paper you want it to be juicy. So basa-basa. So habang basa pa siya, you try to cover it with as much paper or much of the ink as you want to take out the streaks, yung mga linya-linya, if you want it a flat color. There are some advantages to having streaks on your paper, especially if you want to do some texture like mga wood grains, or when we'll start to do mga say marble or stone or brick, okay siya to have the streaks. But here we just want a flat, consistent color. So don't be afraid to layer that color until you get it as flat and as even as possible. For this exercise, don't use a yellow because a yellow is a very pale color. It's hard to see if you have it like really flat because it almost a yellow will kind of blend with your white paper. So use a darker color until you get the flat color that you want. So pick a dark color. So something like this. So diba parang I did so many passings of the markers na parang, oh my god, like my inks are being absorbed, no? Parang like this material, this medium is expensive and then I'm using so much of it, like you can't help it, ganun talaga siya, no? You know that you're using enough of it when you see that it's starting to bleed on the other side of your paper. Apparently, like especially if you want to blend your color, you want it to bleed at the back. So I would suggest also put another like sheet of paper, because I just have this. So the back of the paper, so it's okay if I'm using this. It's already absorbed. But if you're using another paper, make sure that you have something underneath it because it will really bleed to the back. Tatagos yung ink papunta sa likod. Because that will make it easier for you to blend your inks or your pens later on. Like here, I did this simple ano nga ba to? Blending, like an ombre effect, graded effect. You see here at the back, it's also pretty much the same. So they're almost reversible, just like in the what's the name? In the examples that I have here of my other renderings, nakikita nyo na ano siya, tumatagos talaga siya dito sa likod, because it makes it easier for you to blend stuff. Okay? So, ayun. So, ito na yung sinasabi ko kanina na pag nag-markers kayo, medyo dapat malakas yung loob ninyo. So, kasi medyo magastos siya at parang, oh my God, ang dami kong ginagamit na ink do. So, bawal ang mahina ang loob sa markers, at least para sa akin. So, ayun. So, just like, lunukin nyo na lang yung ano ninyo. Then like, okay, I'm gonna do this, kukomment ako. Is yan. Okay. Kasi matingkad talaga siya. If you really know how to use your markers. Just move my... Yeah. Set up. Okay. So far, okay naman. Sino ang sumusunod dyan sa atin? Again, no, kung may questions kayo, huwag kayong mahiyang magtanong. Okay, so next one, we'll do a graded color. We'll do a graded color. So we'll start with dark. Well, we want something dark and then it fades up to white as we move along, no? So kayo na bahala if you want to start from the bottom or you want to start from the top, no? Like dark and then it goes to white, or dark and then it goes to white pababa. What paper will we be using? Paper, like what I mentioned, no? Something that is appropriate for the medium. So sketch pad paper is fine. Kung wala kayong sketch pad paper, kahit bond paper, pwede. No? Just be gentle. Pag gumamit kayo ng bond paper, be gentle with your brush para hindi mapunit yung papel, no? As for the size, if you can find the 9x11 like this one, no? So this is 9 by Chamba, nakahanap ako kahapon, 9x11, so that's fine. Kung wala A4 is fine. Kung walang A4, kung bond paper lang talaga meron kayo, hindi kayo makabili na ano, yung bond paper na short, 8.5 by 11, that also works, no? Pwede naman kasi ano, just format it the same way dito, no? Borders 1/2 inch, 1 inch dito, and then just divide everything evenly pagdating dun sa mga individual boxes. Yun, medyo mapupunit nga siya. So, kaya mas maganda kung ganitong yung yung sketchpad paper, kasi mas matibay siya. Pero I swear guys, pwedeng gumamit ng bond paper. Dapat maingat lang kayo sa paglatag ng kulay. Huwag masyadong makuskos kasi masisira yung papel pag bond paper. Pero dito, sketchpad paper, okay naman siya. Ayun. Watercolor pad, okay lang naman pag nag-watercolor paper kayo, no? It's actually pretty good. Makapal yung papel, hindi siya madaling masira. Pero yun lang nga, dahil textured yung papel, di ba, may mga lubak-lubak siya, kailangan mong diinan yung paghagod ng markers mo. So, mas maraming na-absorb na ink yung papel, no? Tapos, dahil makapal siya, tapos gusto mo nga, hindi ganun actually, teka, mahirap ba mag-blend ng markers pag watercolor paper? Actually, hindi naman. Magastos lang sa ink kasi makapal yung papel. So, kasi gusto mo medyo basa yung papel pag gumagawa ka ng blending. So, medyo magastos siya. Pero kung wala talaga kayong ibang choice, watercolor paper is fine. So, appropriate naman siya. Lalo na kung halimbawa hindi kayo confident sa sabihin niya, mabigat yung kamay ko, use watercolor paper is fine. So just use what you want. No, not want. Use what you have, no? And just be aware kung ano yung pwedeng mangyari. No? So kung masyadong manipis yung papel, like bond paper, it does rip, no? Baka mapunit siya. So be very gentle when you put your colors. If you're using watercolor paper, because it's thicker, you'll need more ink to blend colors, no? Tapos malubak-lubak siya, so kailangan diinan mo ng konti. So meron talagang mga limitations. Ayun. Kung wala, if you have this big mga sketch pad sheet, di ba lang yun? It's like 9, what's the size of it? It's like, di ba it's like 12 by 16 or 12 by 18 yung size na. You can fold it in half, so you get a 9 by 12. And then you can use that also. So, yun. Medyo kailangan ng konting diskarte dito. Yeah, by the way, when you're doing the plate mismo, don't forget to take photos of your work. And then when you upload it to Big Sky, it will not be graded, but it will help me check your progress and then give you better feedback later on when I check it. Especially kung nagtataka kayo na parang, sir, okay naman sa una, bakit pumangit sa dulo? Baka pwede natin tignan doon pag tinignan natin yung colors, yung mga progress photos ninyo. Okay? Ayun. So, we'll proceed to the graded portion, to the next column, to the next box. Again, if you have any questions, even if it's already like past, just put it here, and then I will reply as we go along. Kasi hindi siya, there's some sort of there's a small delay in the feed. Okay, so for this one, for the graded wash, if you have 3 colors, I think this one works best. Kasi when I do shading, I want at least 3 colors. I notice that 3 colors work best with each other. For those of you who like watching anime, for example, or like manga, anything or even comic books. If you notice, why did I use anime or manga? Because like anime and manga, they use a lot of Copic markers. They use actually a lot of markers when they render stuff. I want you to notice, like, for example, when they render the hair, like how many colors does the hair actually have? You'll notice that they usually have at least 2. Most of the time it's 3. If you want it more detailed, it's 3. If you want it like mabilisan lang, usually mga dalawang kulay lang yan. So when I render something in markers, I also try to do that. I try to use at least 2 colors, but if I can do it, I use at least 3 colors of the same family, to get a nice color gradation. Tapos, okay, this is something that I always wanted to say to you, but I seem to forget naman. When you're rendering something, even if you're using, for example, I'm going to use just this color for the rendering, when you're rendering something on anything, even if you're just using one pigment of color, you're actually rendering with two colors. So bakit ko nasabi yun? You have to take into consideration the color of your paper. Okay? So this paper is already white. So there is always white in the composition. Okay? So minsan kasi we just, most of that, or many times, we just want to take out the white, and put the color on top of it. So nawala yung white. But in many circumstances, you actually want some of the white to show up. So kailan yon? For example, if you want to paint something shiny, or you want to paint something translucent, yung parang nakikita, tumatagos yung image sa likod, may nakikita ka pa sa likod. Remembering that white is a color already there is helpful. Hindi nyo kailangan tanggalin yung white. You can leave the white on top of there to help you achieve a certain effect. So in this case, since we're doing a graded wash, I want some of the white to still be there. Hindi ko kailangan siyang hindi ko siya kailangan takpan. So ayun, I want to keep it in my mind na nandyan siya. So hindi ako magtatanggal. So I'll use that to my advantage today. So since I already chose my 3 colors, again, if you don't have 3 colors, you can get away with 2 colors. So just be very strategic about it. So dito, I want to work very very fast, kasi kung mabagal, mahihirapan kayo. So for this one, maybe I'll just put it until there. I want to keep some of the white. So just very very quickly, I'll put some, start with the lightest color, and then like streak. So yung nakikita nyo, medyo nakikita, tumatagos yung image sa ilalim. So okay lang yan. Okay. And then I'll use the second darkest color, and then I'll start from the top, and then I'll work hanggang dyan lang siguro. So remember to keep, try to work a little fast. Okay. So once you know how to use markers, an advantage of it is it's easier to put in colors, so you kind of tend to work a little bit faster, mas mabilis matapos yung trabaho. And then for the third color, I'll put it on top. So ngayon nakikita nyo na, okay, so may tatlong division ng kulay. So you go back to your first color, the lightest color, and you use that to blend your colors in para mawala yung linya kung yun yung gusto nyong effect. So you do either like a circular motion and try to blend out the colors. So since nandito na tayo, let's put some of that there. So kung nakikita nyo dito, you kinda see na nagbe-blend yung kulay. Nawawala na yung mga linya-linya. So put some more in the middle kasi parang hindi masyado nakikita yung middle color. So put some more. And then since it's a little bit streaky, I'll try to blend it out using the lighter color. Then maybe I'll put some more of the darker color here on top para lang mag-blend, mas mag-emphasize yung color. And then since the paper is pretty moist, basa-basa talaga siya. Have to be gentle with the laying of the color so that you don't accidentally rip your paper. So be careful. Light hand. We'll try to blend out everything. So that's how you get a graded wash. So one color, you take advantage of the white, so from dark, from light, and then something like a medium color, and then a dark color. Now, if you notice the middle color, no, halos hindi nyo siya nakikita. No? Kaya ako sinabi kanina na kahit kung dalawa lang yung kulay na meron kayo, you can actually get away with just using two colors. No? Kasi yung sa gitnang kulay, lalo na pag medyo malayo mo siya titignan, halos hindi mo siya napapansin na nandun siya. No? So kung dalawa lang yung kulay nyo, okay lang. You can get away with it. Yun lang nga, no? You really use a lot of that lighter color. No? So in marker rendering, most of the time, you use the lighter color to blend two colors together. No? So kung meron kang gustong gawin, tapos gusto mong nag-fade from dark to light, no, ginagamit mo yung lighter na color na kulay para mag-blend ng dalawang kulay o tatlong kulay sa isang composition. No? Now sometimes you might see people, you might see something like this, colorless blender. No? Nakikita nyo yun. So this is like a Copic Zero, and this is like colorless blender. Actually hindi ko talaga ginagamit to. I hardly use it. No? Natuyo na nga ata to kasi hindi ko masyado ginagamit. No? Pero ayun, if you think this is useful for you, can get a blender. I don't really find it very useful myself. No? Maybe I just don't know how to use it. Pero ayun, you don't need something like this. You can get away with just using a lighter color or something. Okay, so that's how you get the graded color. Again, if you have questions, just put it in the box. Color. Now we'll go to two color grades. So just like the watercolor, just like the watercolor exercise that we have, we're going to use two colors. Nag-fade siya dito ng puti sa gitna, and then we'll use two different colors. So maybe here we can get away with like using two colors, so one dark, one light, and then we'll go into white, and then light, and then another dark. So I already picked out teka, nasa yun? We have some colors picked out here. So maybe I'll use these colors for this. Wait, let me choose. Sandali lang. That one. Maybe this one. I'm going to use these colors today for this one. So it's a yellow green color, and then like a blue green color for this. So again, if you're not really sure what you're doing, you can test it out. And then again, questions, just put it in the chat box. Okay, so we'll start with a lighter color. We'll try to keep this the middle white. So what I do is, like, if I want to do something, and usually maybe you notice like the strokes that I use, like it's like I'm checking my hand stroke mo, parang akong nag-check lang yun. So it's kind of like feathering, which we'll go into later on. But I find it easy to do that, especially if I want something to fade from dark to light. You know. So anyway, we'll start with the yellow, and then I just like so do that very quickly. So obviously here you leave streaks, which is fine. Okay, and then while it's still wet, we'll go over it with a darker color. So we'll go over that very quickly, and then we'll blend the two colors together by using the lighter color marker. So just very quickly we'll try to take out the streaks of color as much as possible. I want to add a little bit more to the top just to make it like really dark, and as dark as I can get it with this color, kasi yan na yun, hindi na siya magiging darker pa. And then again, I'll blend it out with the lighter color. Maybe I'll use the, since nandito na tayo, maybe I'll use this colorless blender to try to fade out the color here into white. And so this is the only time that I actually use a colorless blender. Otherwise, hindi ko talaga siya ginagamit. Okay. So the same thing here at the bottom. Get a lighter color, a different one. Just very quickly. So halos di niya nakikita yung color. Pero hopefully blend out natin siya. Yung ganito. Now sometimes you see some people using dipping one pen into another para magkaroon ng fading. Actually hindi nyo naman talaga kailangan gawin yun. You can just use a lighter color pen and then just like blend it out on the paper itself. So basta basa pa yung papel, you can get away with using it and try to blend out the colors. So parang dalawang ombre effect, and then they fade out into each other. So try to put some more color here on top. So parang nag-blend na silang dalawa sa may gitna. So now you have like two ombre effects fading into each other. You can emphasize some colors, of course, by adding a little bit more. Put a little bit more here at the bottom kasi parang nag-fade or parang nag-bleed yung color. And then if there are still some streaks, you can always go back to it and try to blend it out. So yung sa strokes para sa blending, you can go like this, no? Parang circular motion, or you can go pa ganon, no? Depende kung ano yung mas komportable kayo. Most of the time you go like this, no? So that's the second effect that I wanted to try to get, no? So parang almost like a white here, and then you have a light color and then going dark. So it's just two colors, and then here top the same thing, light, white-ish, and then it goes dark as you go along. So try doing that. I guess so far okay naman tayo. Hindi naman tayo nahihirapan dyan. Kumusta na kayo? So yun, ano na, nag-bleed na yung kulay sa ano ko. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, just like put it in the chat box. Yeah. Okay. So for this one, next we'll go into variegated colors. So again, if you have questions, just like type it there. Huwag kayo mahiya. Okay, so anong gagawin natin for the next one? Ano nga ba? Okay, so for the variegated colors, no, I just want you to get a couple of colors, and then we'll just like try to blend them all together. So okay, pick like a good color combination. So maybe this one, so since like I have like a pink, I have like a violet, so maybe I'll get a blue color. So para just like blend one to another. So just maybe this is a little too dark. Pick another lighter color. That one. Yeah, maybe this one. RB21. Yeah, maybe this one instead. So maybe I'll use this one. So it's very like pretty kawaii, very girly. So I'll just do this. Put some colors there. You can go with this. So it's one color. Maybe I'll put this one here, and then I'll try to blend the two colors together as much as I can. Obviously hindi talaga siya mag-blend fully, no? But try to get the two colors to blend with each other. So always use the lighter color to blend your two colors together. And then I put that there. Maybe I'll put this here. Paper around, parang madaling maglatag ng kulay, whatever is more comfortable for you. And then I'll always use the light color to try to blend the other colors together. So, pwede naman. Meron kasi nagsasabi na parang hindi dapat ginagawa yan. It really depends. So, like what effect do you really want with your colors? There are some colors that work well with each other. There are some colors that don't really work with each other. So how will you know like what works and what doesn't work if you don't play around with your colors? So there's a lot of experimentation, I think, with using markers. Because like if I tell you like, oh, these colors work with each other, if that effect might not be the same if you have another brand of markers. So get to know your materials very, very well. This works, or this is true for watercolors, markers, color pencils. you're all you kind of work with each other. So ayun, get intimate with your pens and see what works. Kasi not everything works with everything else. Not that one. Pangit ang labas. So obviously, this is where a lot of your color theory come in. Yung sinasabi na if you put like two colors from the opposite of the color wheel, you tend to get a brown or a gray color. That's pretty true for markers. So be very considerate when you're using your markers. Kasi once nandyan na yan, wala na, hindi nyo na siya matatanggal. So katulad dito, this is admittedly this is not a very good color combination. Medyo pangit yung napili kong kulay kasi nagpuputik na siya and it's not a very pleasant color, and then it's kind of hard to blend out. You notice let's see what we can do with this one, especially with this. Try to blend it out again. Huwag kayo ma-frustrate dito ha. So, be gentle, tiyagaan lang. Especially if this is your first time to actually use markers. Kasi most likely you will not get it right on the first try. Kasi kahit ako nga, parang I've been using it for quite a while and I don't get it right the whole time. Parati nagkakamali. Parati din ako nagkakamali pag gumagamit ako ng markers. So be kind to yourself. Don't get frustrated. Just keep on working out. So at least, well, it's not the best example of the variegated color. So maybe you can pick something that's in the same family. I think I made a mistake by choosing this color. Maybe I should have just stuck with the pinks and the violets. I think it would have been easier to blend the colors out and like make them fade into each other. Pero yun, I had to be bold. I tried to use this color. Somehow it doesn't work. So if you have these color combinations, don't use it. It's a little bit hard to blend out. So yun. So pasensya na, ganun talaga nangyayari pag live, nagkakamali tayo. Hindi tayo expert all the time. Nagkakamali din kahit prof ninyo. Okay? Ayun. So again, if you have any questions, tanong-tanong lang dyan. Dito lang tayo. Malapit na tayo matapos. We'll do feathering this time. Maybe for this one, I'll try to create a shape. You can try to render like a ball. I think it's easier if I render something simple. So for this one, we'll do something, use another color. Maybe I'll use these yellows. Ayun, so it's like Y02, Y08, and then YR23. Ayun, so I'll try to render a ball, and then meron siyang parang shine sa gitna. So when you do feathering, no, so obviously feathers, so you want something, you want this, no, a flicking motion. So maybe we can do a test, a sample here on our scratch paper. So when you do feathering, you want something that goes like this. You want a flicking motion, parang check ka lang na gano'n. Tapos, so you want a stroke that is like this. I find it very useful for blending things. So we'll do that here and do a flicking motion. So try to render like a ball. Start here. So flick, 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 flick. And then here at the bottom also, I'll do the same thing. And try to keep the middle as white as possible. Preserve some of the white. So now you can see like a circle, no? Parang bola. I'll put in the second color, darker one. And so flick lang. So obviously nakikita pa rin yung ilalim. But now you can see that it's starting to form, to take more shape. And there is more shading in the form. So flick, flick. And I kind of have like a fairly decent ball with the feathering technique. Now for the last one, I just want, because I want it like more solid, I'll put in a last darker color. You can get away with using two colors here, pero if you have it, maganda kung may tatlo. So I'll put that here, just on top. And I'll put some also here at the bottom. Since this is already the darkest part, I'm just going to use like very short flicking motions para hindi masyadong intense yung kulay. Tapos what I do is like markers usually work very well with like color pencils and pencils. So for this one, just to solidify the shape, I'm going to outline it with 2B pencil. We'll choose another thicker one. This is a 2B pencil. I'm just going to put some outlines there just to like really solidify the shape and to give it more definition. So tapos actually if you want, you can put, to shade it a little bit with pencil. You can give it a try here. So we'll be doing that later on. So yes, you can put a little bit of shading, flicking motions lang din, similar to the flicking, feathering motion that we use with the marker. So something like this. So I find that most of the time I use a flickering motion when I want to blend out colors. I just find it to be very useful for blending colors. If I want to put texture, if I want to ano pa nga ba, I want to make something look shiny also. I think it's very convenient to do the flicking motion. Because I preserved some of the white of the paper. Lumalabas pa kasi yung puti ng papel, no? And like I mentioned earlier, you kind of have to learn how to use some of the whites of your paper to get like a better blending of the colors. Okay? So pinapatagos mo siya ng konti. So something like this, you can test it again, or you can give it another try. We'll go for another color. Maybe this one. Yeah, I think I'll use these ones to do the other ball here at the bottom. Ayusin ko lang ito kasi hindi maganda. So we'll do the same technique with another color. So, yun natin po. Again, no, flicking motion. Parang nag-check kayo. Bahala kayo kung saan kayo gusto nyo magsimula. Gusto nyo magsimula sa baba, gusto nyo sa taas, pwede naman. Ano namang tama o mali talaga dito. So obviously the green is a darker color. Mas nakikita nyo yung I guess, mas nakikita nyo yung flicks. So what you really want here is you want some of the whites to show. Gusto nyo nakikita nyo yung konting puti ng papel. Because that will help you come up with a more solid, a more well-blended color. Para hindi magmukha masyadong coloring book yung gawa ninyo. And you're also defining the shape of your object. More. Okay. By the way, I noticed that my webcam, the exposure is very bright. Kaya kung yung mga stream, so parang napaka-liwanag dito sa akin. Actually, hindi siya ganun ka, masyado lang mataas yung exposure ng aking camera, yung webcam. Hindi ko alam kung paano siya i-adjust pa. Kaya hindi ko ma-color correct yung exposure. So, kung ano yung nakikita nyo, actually mas darker siya sa totoong buhay kaysa sa kung ano yung nakikita nyo sa camera. So kung ano yung kaputian na nakikita nyo sa screen niyo, hindi talaga ganyan kaputi yung papel. And then last one, maybe sa darker color. Para lang mas tagos. So mas siya, no? Ngayon so gagamitin natin yung lighter color para mag-blend out, para pagpantayin yung mga kulay. Yun ay kung gusto niyo. So again, just using the feathering technique, try to blend out the colors as best as you can. It's still retaining that white in the middle. Actually, you can get away with if you don't have 3 colors, no? Pwede namang dalawang kulay lang. It actually works well also, kasi you're taking advantage of the white of the paper. Ginagamit yung puti na kulay ng papel para gumana para sa inyo. Tapos, we'll use another pencil to outline this one. So, parang minsan ginagamit ko yung lapis din para linisin yung edges, para mas maging well-defined yung shape. And it helps make your work a little bit more polished, para mas mukhang malinis yung gawa ninyo. Tapos, kung gusto nyo, you can always add some shading using your pencil on your marker rendering, no? Lalo na kung halimbawa dalawa lang yung kulay na ginamit, no? Pwede nyo gamitin yung lapis para mag-shading. So, if you're doing this, what you're actually doing is you're doing mixed media na siya, no? So just fine. Kung gusto nyo magsimula ngayon, okay naman, no? So marami namang intro levels yan. So that is the second to the last, no? Again, if you have any questions, lagay lang kayo dyan. So the last one we'll do is yung tinatawag na dabbing, no? So essentially, just get your color and then you dab na sa mga sa papel. Oops, lumalaw na naman ang aking you just dab your way through the paper. So madali lang siya. Para saan to, no? Para sa akin, ginagamit ko siya pag halimbawa gusto ko gumawa ng foliage. I want to do backgrounds, no? Mga dahon-dahon, pag malayo yung object, para siyang if I'm looking for an equivalent in watercolor, it's like dry brush technique, no? So you just get a color and then you put it on top of each other. Works very well if you're using a dark color, no? Pag light yung color, lalo na kung napintura na siya tapos ipapatong mo lang siya sa taas, syempre halos hindi siya makikita. Pero if you're using a dark color, then I think that's where it works very well, no? So one way that I usually do trees, no? Since nandito na tayo, I'll try to render maybe a simple tree, no? Isang simpleng puno. So I'll just sketch out a simple tree, no? So dalawa lang yung branches, and then so when I do something like this, I start with a fairly light color. So I'll check my swatch here and see like which color I want to use. Maybe E50. Nasaan ka na? Can't find that one color. Nasaan ka na? 50, 51. Maybe an E51 works kasi hindi ko makita yung aking E50. So, just do simple tree with branches, and then again I usually use mga 3 colors. 99, 67, maybe 99. Yeah, so maybe I'll use these 3 colors. So I'll start with a light color, no? So parang just a simple tree na may sunlight, tapos may mga shadows. So dabbing is essentially parang ganito. So you just do dot 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 dot. So lalabas siya. Depende, no, kung paano nyo yung ninyo, yung angle ng pen ninyo. If you do it like this. So obviously you get like a very pointy, and pwede rin namang eksaktong ganito, no? So if you want it a little bit more rounded, then you go for this stroke, no? If you want it a little pointy, you point your brush. If you want it like rounded, you go directly above, no? So in this case, I'm going to use this a couple of this, no? So usually start with doing this just to get like a shade, an outline of the tree. So since malayo kasi siya, so each dab of your marker looks like your they look like the leaves of your tree. So mukha siyang dahon ng puno ninyo. So once na outline nyo na siya, you can start going with a darker color, no? So parang saan ba siya magkakaroon ng shadows, no? Sabihin natin nandito yung sunlight ninyo, yung light source ninyo. So obviously dito sa right side, no, ng mga branches, doon magkakaroon ng darker color. So I'll dab some more colors on just to build up the color of your tree. So dab, dab, dab. If you want to add more of the lighter color, you can. If you want to add more of the lighter color, dab, dab, dab. Very simple, hindi naman suggestion of a tree, no? Hindi naman tayo we're not after like a super hyper realistic na tree. We just want to make it look like, oh, that kind of looks like a tree. Mukhang puno naman yan. Hindi naman talaga siya yung super parang wow, napaka realistic, parang pwede ko siyang akyatin. Hindi naman ganon, medyo mahirap talaga gawin yun. It's very time consuming. So what we are after is a suggestion of a tree. Now maybe this one, I think I should have added some sort of a yellowish color. Maybe not that one. So what you want here is, it's like you can still see the individual dots, or dabs of color to suggest your tree. So try working with like the different kinds of greens and yellows that you have for when you create your tree. And then we'll do the branches and the tree trunk. So we'll do more of this as we go along. So just like try to get like what you've probably done something like this in watercolor. So try to remember what you did with watercolors. So I'm just like dabbing colors, very streak like. Use a darker. Tapos, if you want it a little bit more subtle, you can always use a pen, no, or a pencil. Pencil pala. You want it a little bit more. So, obviously, ang dami kong ginamit na kulay, pero actually, you can just use like 2-3 colors for this one. No? I'll teach you how to do something a little bit more, because I didn't plan like what colors to use there. So, gamit lang ako ng gamit ng kulay. Pero there are more efficient ways of doing it. So, parang ganito. So, you want it like sticky. You can get like dots there to get your color. No? So that is essentially dabbing. No? So you, anytime you want to use texture, you want to make trees, you want to like render carpets, you want to render anything textured, no? You usually use like a dabbing motion. No? So having said that, like, do we have any questions? No? Comments, reactions? Like, oh my god, sir, your technique is bad. Okay lang naman. I don't claim to be a very good marker renderer, no. Markers are not my medium. I just want to like really learn how to use it also. I can, okay lang naman siya. I mean, there are certain things that I can do with it. Ayun. Pero, yun. So, hopefully I can convey that to you also. Like in this class. So, ayun. So, may tanong ba tayo? Comments? Reactions? Comments? Reactions? Violent objections? Nandyan pa ba kayo? Okay. Hindi ko alam kung nandyan kayo. Wala eh. Hindi na lang masyadong blue. Okay lang kayo naman. Okay, so since nandito na tayo sa may dulo, malapit na tayo matapos. Ang gagawin natin dito sa practice na sheet, no? We'll try to recreate, we'll try to do something similar to what we did with watercolor, no? So a simple landscape, no, of like mountains and some trees, ganon. Gagawin natin yan dito, no? Pero using markers, no? So syempre hindi ko pa to pre-practice. So this is like as raw as you can get, no? So parang sana hindi pangit ang labas. Okay, so for this rendering, I'm gonna use like pretty much a complementary color scheme, no? So a lot of like oranges and blues, no? So orange and blue, they're complementary. So we'll use this for the sky, and then we'll use this for the mountains. Okay. So we'll start with a light color. We'll try to get like a a dusky color, no? So parang palubog na yung araw at the end of the day. So I already did a sketch here. Hindi ata makita masyado kasi masyadong light. Ayun. Pero meron ng ano, pencil marks. Yan. So use this one. Sana hindi ako maubusan ng kulay. To do the sky, so orange sky, very quickly. Kahit streaky siya, okay lang kasi sky naman siya, so may texture siya ng konti. So use that. Habang basa pa siya, I'll put in another color. So I'll use like a feathering technique here. I'll use the broad tip, naka-feather siya. Then the darkest color I'll use that also. I think I need a darker color for this one. Ito more parang mas earthy na color. So since nandito na siya, lalapad ko na rin siya. I think I need a darker, more earthy color for this one. You know, maybe 1 or 4, 6. Maybe not that one. Yeah, maybe this one. So this one's an earth color. Earthy color. And then I'll blend it out using the lighter color. For the darkest color that I placed, in E8, I'll try to make it a little bit more organic, no? May softening the lines. So use a lot of feathering here para hindi masyadong matigas. Tingnan. I'll try to blend it out again using the lightest color. So by this point, medyo basang-basa na talaga yung papel ko. So mag-iingat ako ng konti para hindi mapunit yung papel ko. Tapos, kung mapapansin nyo, minsan parang nagbabago yung kulay pag natuyo na yung papel, no? So, mag-ingat din, mag-ingat, just be aware na minsan nagbabago yung kulay. So, iwanan ko muna yung sky. So, balikan natin yan mamaya kung parang gusto natin may adjust pa ng konti. But for this one, no, we'll start doing the mountain. So I want it like medyo faded, no, so parang foggy siguro yung mountain. So maybe we can use we'll try to do a fading effect, graded effect. So put like a light color here, and then medyo solid dito, pero pagdating dito sa baba, I'll start feathering out the colors to leave more of the white. First one, then I'll use a second darker color to do the second na ano, so the same thing, I'll do a feathering technique or application. Color to blend it out a little, still keeping the white, and then I'll use an even darker color. Use a feathering. Lighter color, try to blend it out a little. One, yung darkest na blue ko, I'll use that here. And for this one, I just want it really dark. With a very solid blue here. Parang medyo lumalandscape na siya. Now, what you can do here, if you want to add a little bit more detail, you can always get your pencil and you can start putting in some lines. And if you want it a little bit more well defined, So just trying to make that as well defined as possible. So you can put some lines there. So this is already mixed media because you're using two different rendering media. This is just a preference, and if you don't want to do that, it's fine. There are other ways of doing this. Trying to look for another color. Kind of works. Weird. You can add some textures. Adding some textures just to make it a little bit more interesting. I'm not sure if this will work, but I actually want to add some white highlights. So I'll see if it works. So I'm getting my white jelly roll pen. Para bang sometimes it kind of looks like, oh, it's snow or just put some streaks of color to suggest some form of texture on the mountain. Here we'll add some another just some effect lang. Tapos there's that pencil. You can add some definition to the mountain. You can put a little bit of outline using a pencil. Tapos as a finishing touch, say a suggestion na naman siya. Again, it doesn't have to be photorealistic, no? It's just a suggestion of like faraway mountains. I'm going to use where's my pen? I'm going to use this, no? Kasi okay, kung satisfied na ako dito sa ginawa ko, just like I'm not really satisfied here. Pero, okay, so parang, medyo, parang okay na naman siya. So, I'm going, at alam ko hindi ko na siya talaga gagalawin. So, gagamitin ko yung, ano ko, yung permanent na marker, yung nagbe-bleed, no, para gumawa ng mga puno na naka-shadow. Kasi finishing na siya, so alam kong, hindi na ako magdadagdag pa ng kulay. So, safe na gumamit ng marker na ganito, no, kasi hindi na siya magbe-bleed. So just put some parang pine trees katulad last week, no, ginawa natin. So I'll draw some streaks na ganon kung saan ko gusto ilagay yung mga puno. Couple there, and then I'll put in the details. Puno. Pine trees. You can unleash your inner Bob Ross. Happy little trees against the background, so they're all like black and just like shadows. And I have to put a lot of details into it. So they're just suggestions. They're suggestions of trees. Like when you're painting trees, you don't have to paint every single leaf. You just have to make your audience believe that what they are seeing are trees. Kahit hindi naman talaga siya totoong puno. So just be calm about it. Like, I have a lot of students who are like, oh my god, my trees look bad. Well, kahit ako when I was a student, like my trees were really, really bad. I'm not saying that my trees are really good now, pero they kind of improved over time. So practice. Like painting trees, because they're so convenient to put in almost any kind of composition that you're making. Puno. There. It's almost done. I think. Ayan. And you kind of have like an okay looking landscape, no? Imaginary landscape using pretty much all of the techniques that you used in the different squares for display. So you used a flat color, you did grading, you graded 2 colors, you did some variegating, you used a lot of feathering, and you're gonna use a lot of dubbing also for creating the trees. So you can use, if you don't want to use this, you can always use your markers, like a black marker. You can use that to create your final details. So that is it for this one. So it's almost 2 hours again. Akala ko medyo mabilis ngayon, pero ayun, no? So do we have any questions? Of course, I will post this as a sample plate for you, for your reference, no? Post it in our Discord, and I'll also post it on Big Sky for those of you who are not on Discord, no? So do we have any questions before we end the live stream for today? May tanong ba tayo? Questions po dyan. madali lang siya, di ba? I mean, madali, madali lang siya tingnan. So, puro wala. Sigurado kayo ha. Hindi ko alam kung ano, kung sumunod kayo or you're gonna do it later or may ginagawa kayo. Yun. Basta kung may tanong kayo, huwag mahiyang magtanong, no? Once you start doing it, it's actually pretty easy, you know. It's pretty intense. It's quite bright. For the feathering and dubbing, do we have to copy the one that you have? Hindi naman. You can do other things. So, for the feathering and the dubbing, if you don't want to make a tree, you want to do like a carpet, or say you want to render a small stuffed toy like a teddy bear or your cat. So, there's mga textures, mga balahibo, mga maliliit na mga bagay, pebbles, ganon, okay yung dubbing. No? Yung feathering, that's another way of putting texture. That's another way to blend, especially if you want to leave whites for your composition. No? So you can use another ayun, so you can use other examples, no? Pero I suggest for the feathering, don't render like a box or render something bilog, no? If you want to render a vase using the feathering technique, I would recommend that you do that, no? Simple ball, basta yung medyo bilog, bilugan yung korte, mas okay siya for para sa akin na mas maganda na pang practice yung feathering pag medyo bilugan yung korte, no? A face also is a good object, no, or thing to render using the feathering technique. So question, so okay na tayo. I think okay na ata yung Jewel, no? Denise, like, sir, okay lang ba if darker colors gamitin? Wala po kasing light colors yung markers ko. Medyo matingkad po yung colors. Yeah, okay lang kahit dark colors, no? Ito kasi yung mga kulay ko kasi I tend to prefer lighter colors. Yun. So, inevitably, when bumili ako ng markers, medyo puro light yung mga colors, konti lang yung dark. No? So mga demos ko, puro lighter yung mga colors. Pero kung darker yung colors nyo, I'm sure may variation naman kayo. No? Hindi naman yung puro dark lang talaga. Meron naman kayong yung pinaka-light sa dark colors nyo hanggang pinaka-dark sa dark colors nyo. Yun yung gagamitin nyo halimbawa dito at saka dito. No? So okay lang naman. Hindi naman kailangan ganito yung kulay. No? Kahit anong kulay yan, okay lang. No? Basta gawin nyo yung technique. Tapos, ano pa? Sir, does the tip matter when doing the feathering technique? Does it matter? To a certain extent, it does, no? Kasi, well, I don't know what kind of tip you have. Kasi usually, markers have two tips, diba? Like, one is yung chiseled edge or chiseled tip. Tapos this one has a brush like tip, no? So medyo malambot siya. Okay? I know not all markers have the brush tip. Sometimes you have that yung parang bullet. Yeah, you have a bullet tip. Bullet tip. A bullet tip is this. Yung patusok na matigas. That's what you usually have in your mga permanent markers. So bullet, that's a bullet tip. So saan ba siya mas personally, I use the feathering technique both for the chisel tip and the brush tip, no? Whenever I do have this, I also use so yeah, easy answer is it can work for any kind of tip. But what tip you're going to use depends on the application that you want, no? So for example, kung malaki yung kailangan kong i-render, syempre hindi ako gagamit ng bullet tip or yung brush tip, no? Kasi ang matagal yung yung paghagod. So gagamitin ko yung broad na chisel tip para madami kaagad na na surface ang mako-cover ng paper ko. And then I can do the feathering, no? Pero dito kasi kung napansin nyo, maliliit yung mga spaces natin. So inevitably gumagamit ako nung brush tip or yung bullet tip kasi mas manipis siya, at dahil maliit yung papel, mas nakokontrol ko siya ng maayos. So I guess it's like, like sa watercolors, no? Kung malaki yung object, yung surface area, edi malaki yung brush na gagamitin nyo. So kung maliit lang, katulad nito, you use the bullet tip or yung or yung brush tip kung meron kayo noon, no? Para mas makontrol nyo siya ng maayos. In any case, always test out using your paper first, no? Yung scratch paper nyo, para alam nyo kung saan doon ang mas makokontrol nyo. Kasi these are all just tips, no? What works for me might not work for you, no? So hindi dahil sa ganito ako gumawa ng isang bagay, dapat ganun na din yung gagawin nyo at gagayahin nyo lang siya. Minsan kasi hindi siya gagana para sa inyo, no? So you have to explore also, no? So kung hindi gumagana yung paraan ko, at least alam nyo na hindi siya gumagana, no? So hanap kayo or gawa kayo, isip kayo ng paraan na yung gumagana para sa inyo. Okay. Anything, meron pa ba? Do we have other questions? Before we end the stream, ayun. So, I guess kung wala na, we can end the stream here. So, I'll post the link again. Well, nandun na naman siya sa Big Sky, so hindi ko na kailangan i-post. I will annotate the live stream, no? So you can more conveniently just like scrub, go to the sections that you need when you're reviewing for the plate. Okay? So, ayun. Tapos, i-post ko na lang siya din sa Big Sky, yung sample na plate. So, you'll have a reference. Okay? So, yeah. That's it for today. Thank you for joining me in the live stream for today. So, for next week, we will be doing, we'll render an actual thing using two media. One watercolor, and then we'll do another 4 markers. So medyo madugo yun. You'll spend a lot more time doing it, but hopefully it will be a little bit more fun than doing something like this na parang it's just boxes, no? As in, gawa tayo ng talaga, ng maybe we'll do a building, no? I'm thinking of doing an exterior, the facade of a building, and then we'll render it in watercolor, and then we'll render also something in markers na mixed medium. Okay, so prepare all of your materials by next week. If ever I'm going to do I'll see if I can do I'm thinking of doing live stream outside of class. Kung meron man, I'll just inform you if you want to join. But usually I just record it and then I'll post it on my personal YouTube account, no? And then nakaset na siya to public. So yun. Anyway, kung ano man yun na yun. So yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me today. And if you have any questions, no, post it on our Big Sky. Post it on our Discord, no. Tapos yeah, I'll see you on Thursday for the history class. So yeah, thank you everyone for waking up early and joining me this morning. Okay, thank you. Goodbye. Have a great day.